Right. Here you go.
So thank you, everybody. It is really a huge honor to have the stage at your Thursday talks. It sounds like such a wonderful community. And yeah, if we were in person, we'd all be having cups of coffee or tea and being able to have more of a discussion, as I imagine this is what you, Anka and the team have actually created, is a really beautiful space of conversation and dialogue. And today I hope to share and give a contribution to what I'm sure has been an ongoing conversation about how to support the child, how to be the best version of ourselves in order to help children become the best version of themselves. And so today I want to share a bit more about not only the work that is being done through our community-rooted education program, but ultimately what we can all do as educators and parents, as any individual in a community wanting to create change for a better future. And I apologize, my internet connection seems a little unstable, so I'm going to switch off my video and share my screen. Let's see. Give me a second. Alrighty. Fermented grape juice. I love that.
Oopsie.
And almost there.
No worries.
Starting that. Great. Can everyone see the screen? If I can just get a thumbs up. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Great. So thanks everyone. And it's so nice to see some familiar faces and hopefully soon more familiar names and faces. And to begin, I had spoken to Anka about the topic of today's talk and wondered what I could share to a community of what I'm sure are experts on the child, individuals who have been observing and working with children and in the space for many years. And I thought about the community-rooted education program that we at the Indaba Institute is running and the incredible lessons that have been learned through our team, Prue, Moliswa, Piliswa, and Jennifer Moore and Prue Ramsey. And it's been an incredible journey of starting to understand what the roots of Montessori really look like and what it is that we can do in the education space and beyond to start to shape a more equitable, inclusive, and regenerative world. So my journey currently and my present is working with incredible individuals like Nositelo and Emma, who are in centers as ECD practitioners working for the child and serving the child. But my journey didn't actually begin here in education. To give a short story, my parents came from India, and I am a first-generation South African, and so have my roots in India and a very present identity in South Africa. My dad actually was quite a traveler and adventurer who traveled from India to Nigeria and finally found his place in South Africa, and has an incredible part to play in the person that I've become in my role as director. Growing up with parents who were teachers, I definitely saw the side of education that is not a side you want to see for the future of South Africa, a side where you realize teachers have the highest expectations placed on them, with often very minimal resources to be able to utilize to support the children to become individuals, functioning and productive members of society. And what inspired me, though, was the incredible passion that continued to burn within my parents, a sense of justice to know that it was possible if you did your part in society and you continued to believe that a better future was possible for the children. It was incredibly inspiring, but they always told me, don't get into education, continue on a different path. And I did. I studied sustainable development, inspired by individuals like Wangari Maathai, who fought for the planet for the sake of humanity. And it was important for me at the time to realize that a huge part of the conversation about a better future that was ignored was this idea of nature and our connection to it. And so I committed to becoming a fighter for the environment and studied environmental science, but started to realize that something was missing, that yes, we had seemed to forget and essentially lose our understanding of a connection to nature. But nature could not be had in a conversation without talking about the people that we wanted to save, in a sense. And so I started to find an interest in society, the economy, and the environment, which forms the foundation of sustainable development, looking at how we can function together as an integrated society, looking at our connection to nature, focusing on our understanding of ourselves as a social network, as well as realizing that the economy is a huge part of our functioning as a nation. And so I pursued this postgraduate diploma in sustainable development and began to see how interconnected the problems in the world were. I started to see that we believed there were simple problems that had simple solutions. But in reality, we were dealing with very complex problems in our world. And so I love this quote here by Wangari Maathai, is that education, if it means anything, should not take people away from the land, but instill in them even more respect for it, because educated people are in a position to understand what is being lost. The future of the planet concerns all of us, and all of us should do what we can to protect it. And that was a fundamental belief of mine as a youngster. And then I wound up in the Stellenbosch area and started to work at the Indaba Institute as an assistant. I was there in an education training center with no intention of being involved in education, and found myself starting to realize that the barriers we face in achieving sustainable development have their roots in education. And if many of you may know Sir Ken Robinson for his TED Talk, he's an educationist, sadly passed away last year, but he brought this idea, this concept of challenging how we see education and calling for a learning revolution. He says we stigmatize mistakes, and we're now running national education systems where mistakes are the worst thing you can make. And the result is that we are educating people out of their creative capacities. Lastly, and hugely influential in my journey going forward, was this understanding that from a social justice perspective, there was a lot that we were lacking as a society in terms of addressing the roots of inequality. Here, a quote by Steve Biko is, "Education and development are seeds, one to the other. The key is the humanization of school and the development of a comprehensive curriculum based on the worth of the whole individual." So all of my experiences in the social environmental space, working with like-minded individuals and organizations to understand the complexity of the problems we're facing in South Africa and the globe, and finding myself at the Indaba Institute, and working more closely with teachers and those in the education space, and of course the experience of living those realities with my parents as I grew up, it became very clear that the current education is in fact not meeting the needs of our children and the country. And we know, research has shown that educators are regarded as the most crucial drivers of a good quality education system. And in going through the work of the community rooted education program, what we've started to realize is that this idea of quality education is firstly not accessible, and sadly not moving fast enough in our Montessori community, although there's been incredible work that has been done in the past, especially in South Africa, to change that. But we need to redefine what quality education is. And most importantly, we need to believe that we have the potential to cultivate it. So in this journey of understanding vital importance to challenge the current education system, it always begins with the question, so where do we start? And I was so grateful to be an individual who was working with teachers, essential, as we know, essential drivers of this change, and started to realize with Montessori, as a non-Montessorian walking into the space, that beyond what we see, what we hear about education and the need to have this individual ready to function as a productive member in society, we start to realize that children will become the next generation of little humans, humans that make really important decisions, that design our cities, that lead our provinces and states, that guide the conservation of our resources. And so we need them to be their best selves. But we've been tasked with a very difficult job as humanity of creating these spaces to be able to support the development of a future that children see as their normal. And so we're also tasked with creating individuals who are frustrated with the status quo, but also understand how they can make changes to change that. So ultimately at the Indaba Institute, it became about working together with our educators to speak about what experience we create for the child. I always come back to this photo of the children and one of the teachers at the Lyndon Children's House at the Sustainability Institute, who was on one of our programs, our first 0 to 3 diploma course. And this is what we're aiming for, don't you think? The look of a child in a trusted space, completely at peace, wanting, and we hope, wanting to do their bit in community. We of course have the little child next to her, who's definitely keeping eye on what Christelle is doing. But it's such a wonderful image that says so much more than words can about the work. I see a question of possible to share these slides with us. Yes, we will definitely do that. I hope, Anka, yeah, it will be possible.
Absolutely.
Great. So with all that thinking, I did wonder about the main message of this conversation, which is every revolution, which Sir Ken Robinson is calling for, a learning revolution, begins in the mind. And with the work that I do in systems thinking, is a shift in the system is going to require a system in our mindset. As Montessorians and as individuals working with children, you know that it's our job to create environments that help children have a different way of thinking, of acting and being. And from research, we see that our environment can even go as far as changing the expression of our genes. what that means is that you may grow with a certain gene expression, and what has previously been thought as a barrier to any child's development can now be changed through the environment. It's the nature versus nurture debate that goes on to say, when you're born a certain way, that is who you remain throughout your lifetime. And here we say that the environment, and we see in research, is showing that through a nurturing environment with positive relationships, we can start to see the change in the expression of these genes so that children are no longer limited to their experiences at a young age. So how then can we ignore the importance of an environment that serves development? And it's why it is so crucial that the country and the globe begin to realize how important the work of our educators are. The reality is that the future we want cannot change with knowledge alone. So transferring this knowledge, either be it from an adult to child or adult to adult, will not change the way we think. So we need to challenge this way of thinking. And how does one do that? It starts by really being the role models for the children to be able to see and live what is possible. Again, not a new concept to this incredible Montessori community, but strangely in South Africa, despite many years of work in the country, there are individuals who, despite having 30 to 40 years of experience working with children, still believe that they don't have the capabilities to offer the best to the world, who still believe that they need more. And at the Indaba Institute, we were adamant to change that because we could see how incredible our ECD practitioners, any teachers in this country can be when you see the passion for working with children. And the stories that came from these communities were incredible and maybe unfamiliar or very familiar to some of you. The idea that some of our ECD practitioners that we're working with go as far as to sacrifice a lot of their time and often funds to look after the children in their communities that otherwise wouldn't have access to an opportunity. And every day we're inspired by how they continue, even in what was the most terrible time in our history, for at least all of us in the room, a pandemic that threatened the very livelihoods of so many individuals in schools, as well as the development of our children. And it is a huge inspiration to be working with individuals like this. And what we realize is that, and what is very well known in global literature, is that unless our teacher training programs begin to embrace a new way of pedagogical practice that values all of our children and that focuses on providing children in all contexts what they need, this future of equity and inclusion will remain an illusion. And so our job has been to see how can we reorient teacher training or professional development and truly utilize the potential of teachers to act as catalysts for this incredible transformation we need of the education system. And it starts from the earliest years. Now, I know that we in Montessori community challenge the word educator or teacher, as we know our role is more as a guide. And so the use of the word educator in the title today is really to understand and highlight the fact that all of us can be individuals who create environments for our children. So whether you be a parent or a guide or teacher or someone in government, or our friendly neighbor, everyone has an opportunity to become a role model for the children we serve. And it's important that we do that if we ultimately want to change the way we function as society and as a system. So our work in Klapwitz and Kaimendi with the community-rooted education program was a way of challenging what we started challenging our ways of thinking as we started as an institute. We began in 2017, so still quite a young teacher training center. And we began with our 0 to 3 diploma course and took on a 3 to 6 diploma course and a 6 to 12 diploma course, and believed that we were on the path of being the best training center we could be, as one would expect. What we started to realize in engaging with a lot of our teachers and through our bursary program was that we were providing access in the terms of financial inclusion, but we weren't addressing the fundamental challenge and barrier to development in our community in South Africa, which are addressing the limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, about our children, and about the country. And so how does one begin to give power back to an individual by helping them realize that the knowledge that they so desperately seek sits within them? And that was the aim of CORE, was to try find a way, as the roots of Montessori point to, is realizing that you have the ability to support the children you serve, that through observation, through deep reflection, and by being pragmatic and creating a space that can support development, you ultimately have everything you need to make that change. And it was an incredible journey and not a very easy one. And it began with a lot of conversation, lots of trial and error, but ultimately it became about throwing the attention back on the individuals who need to realize that they in fact have the knowledge to be able to work with the child, to be able to observe and respond to the needs that were becoming evident in everyday life. And it was so wonderful to see how each teacher over time would, as we all do with crafts, start to become so focused on creating materials and experience that we mentioned in the beginning, an experience for these children, and realizing how every day brought insights and an opportunity to do something more for the child. So there were no mistakes, only opportunities for learning. Every opportunity to try something new. And it became so hopeful to be able to think, wow, imagine if we lived in such a world where mistakes were not stigmatized and we were able to, as children, begin to experiment and learn and respond to the world in really positive ways, because we have this incredible community, this experience of community that is created. A big part of CORE, that you'll see a lot of wonderful material making, is the challenge of this idea of quality. We, and many of us may know Montessori to be expensive materials. At one point, it may have been something we had really wanted for our spaces. And as a training center, something we strive to achieve is a practice room for our teachers to be able to work and see what their classrooms could eventually look like. And then we began to ask these questions of, but why do we need, why do we set these standards for materials when the purpose of education or the purpose of guiding development is simply to be able to have this exercise of learning of these materials that provide feedback to the child that ultimately stimulate development? And why do we limit it to one way of working? We of course know that there's so much time and thought that is put into the Montessori materials we know today. But we all know that Mario Montessori never designed these materials to be inaccessible. They were ways of being able to use what communities had to cater for the children that they had with them. And we started to see what a positive experiences was for individuals to realize that they could, from this course, start to have their own materials in their centers, that they could actually go to a hospice shop, even to their neighbors' houses, to visit their kitchen cupboards, to find different materials that would offer the same experience of learning that they wanted for their children. An important part of it, on the same side of the coin, was that materials don't make us better teachers. Materials enable. And it was through this we began to learn a lot more about what it is that quality could look like and how it is that we can address this problem of inequality and the limiting beliefs that we have that restrict us from truly developing, and continue on, if we aren't careful, transferring them into our children. And in that way, these generational limitations we place on ourselves, the cycle continues. And so we have some stories that I'd like to share of how it felt to feel like there might be potential in breaking that cycle. And CORE, like many other efforts in South Africa, I'm sure, started to show how we can, as a community, make impact once we address all of those points. And I wanted to read a couple of these, and very inspiring was the reflection of one of our co-facilitators, and essentially the piloter of our first CORE program, as well as an individual who'll be hosting us this Saturday for a conversation, Luleka. And she said, the way the training is being conducted, the way the training accommodates everyone, so you can speak your own language and there's no judgment. And even the facilitator, if you come and ask and they explain to you, the way they explain it, it doesn't actually sit in your brain. It goes to your heart also. So you understand it and you kind of get touched by what has been explained to you. And Prue had shared a really incredible insight into this. She said, what stood out for me was the transformation in the woman. At the outset, they were reluctant to speak and held the belief that anything they had to say was insignificant, unimportant, and irrelevant to what they had come to learn. They felt that they had little to offer each other or the so-called experts. There was little expectation from them that this program would be any different from any previous experiences they had in early childhood development. By the end of our journey together, the women now had opinions which they were not afraid to voice, were confident enough to ask questions and to trust their own intuition to follow the child. They had realized the relevance of their life experiences. They became women empowered to access materials in their communities, to make equipment for the child, which they would give the child the developmental opportunities they need. And I wanted to share this insight from one of the incredible CORE participants we had, who had the most incredible energy whenever we went to visit her space. And she had written down, so today you came and I was so excited. Like I said earlier, I couldn't even sleep and ran into the shops to find the things that you told me I can find, especially at hospice shops. I've got my small glasses, I've got my trays, I've got my mats and holders, and now I'm getting the feeling of setting up my school the Montessori way. Not my whole school yet, but I believe in a year or two, I'll be ready to start my day the Montessori way. I also want to let our whole clubmates have an idea of Montessori, because we never grew up with this method. We always had a misunderstanding of Montessori, but now it is on our doorstep and in our schools. And the last point, which is part of, I'm sure, the energy of this community, is the belief that something is really moving. After a century of work, it does feel that there will come a time once again for us to come together and unite as a Montessori community in South Africa. And Fahma definitely feels that's the case. She said, there's no more stopping now. The explosion has already happened, and there's no more stopping now, because we have to pray for more funds, and then you've got to get satellites all over South Africa. You've got to bring in your people. You've got to get ready. There's a whole new movement happening. You've got to believe me. For too long, this has been hidden. Not hidden, but it was mislooked. Other people came with their programs, and Montessori was on one side, because we thought that Montessori was only for certain people, and now it's amongst us. It hit Fahma, and because it hit me, I fell in love, and now I'm spreading the word. Inspired by individuals like Asnelo, Fahma, and many others, we started to realize how important it was to support the adults in our community, because the adults in our community serve the children, and the children become the future leaders of this country. We hope it will be our role in decades to come. And this is another image that says 1,000 words for us as a team, is that this is what community, what we hope community in South Africa can be. About unity, about collaboration, about the other. So the last few points, the ultimate principles of the core program then became about the prepared adult, helping educators understand that they come with a wealth of knowledge, that they can problem solve in their own contexts with the resources that they have, sharing why they need to be role models in their centers, and working on the observational skills to be true observers of the child, all with the focus of the child in community. And as we do in the Montessori community, we focus as well on the prepared environment. And in the context of core, that was making sure that the environment reflects the context of the community, finding ways in which to bring items that relate to their children and the families that they support into the spaces, into their centers. It also spoke about the creation of really beautiful materials with reusable items, recyclable items, and easily accessible materials. Ultimately, with much practice, we start to redefine what quality looks like. And it was a realization through community-rooted education and through Montessori, we understand that quality isn't expensive, it isn't flashy, it isn't big, it's purposeful. And the last leg of community-rooted education program, and ultimately the understanding of how we can shape a better future, is connecting to our community. And in the photo you see Funeka, the community development officer of Stellenbosch municipality. And we began to develop a relationship with her, as is needed in the communities we work in. In the same way, we need to look at health and nutrition, as those are major components of learning in our child's development, something I'm sure many of you also working on in your own spaces. And lastly, we build partnerships with service providers who work in a variety of different spaces and other nonprofit organizations working with ECD centers and the focus on education in the child. And lastly, we've began a journey with research partners to start monitoring and evaluation of these programs on our teachers, on the change of the adult that can ultimately result in the transformation of a space that can support the development of the child. So it comes back to looking at what kind of community are we trying to create for our children. I have no doubt that that sense of community continues to be created in many of your spaces. And I have the utmost respect for the individuals who continue to fight for our children, despite the many problems we face in the education system. And it is my hope that each of us will be able to start to realize how when we are able to address the limiting beliefs that hold many of us back from achieving our own full potential, when we start to realize quality looks different and can be accessible, when we start to make time and space for our community and the connection to nature, we see that one individual, one family, one school, one institution, one community that recognizes the potential of the child to transform humanity and commits to making the future possible can create that change. And so I want to end with a quote from Arundhati Roy. And she said, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. This is beautiful.
Thank you. And I hope we have time for any questions or thoughts for discussion.
We do. I think that would be nice just to chat a little bit. If anybody wants to say something and add something. I think we have quite a few messages, not quite, but a few messages.
Ignore the naughty message from me, Anka. But
Right.
Jasmine, thank you so much. It's really inspiring what you're trying to do. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking how you need to have the ear of people in government and the people who are deciding how the ECD programs are being rolled out. So when you shared that last slide about working with the municipality in Stellenbosch, at least that was like an answer to my unanswered question. So hopefully that matures and goes beyond that one municipality, because if you get the ear of government, then maybe we can actually make you can make a big difference across the whole country. I'm hopeful that it goes there, and keep going. We're rooting for you.
Thank you. That is, yeah. I mean, I always struggle to think that we're any different from any of the individuals and organizations in this community. But I definitely know we have a part to play, and I hope we do that really well and continue to contribute these insights and share them. And without a doubt, government is such an important party, and it's a difficult one, without a doubt, because we know how government changes and we know the agendas that exist, not to say that they aren't good people fighting for a better future in government, but the systems, once again, are the ones that are barriers to us working. But what has been so incredible is that we've started to see, and we know in the Montessori community this is the case, when people are Montessori parents or parents of children in a Montessori space, we see conversions in their way of thinking and being, and that's the case definitely for Funeka, is she is starting to see and want to invest in Fachma school, where her children are based, and started to see the potential of Montessori. And so it is, I think we are being shown a pathway into winning the hearts of individuals in different spaces, including government. And we're hoping to utilize other ways of working. And we have individuals on our team. Juliet McGee is one of them, who's finding her way through many different individuals in this space to be able to have these conversations. But again, always your support and questions and your ability to think and push really important points is so valuable in the community. And so very happy to be part of it. And maybe just on Marina, your point about being isolated in a rural area, I think that's also what we've learned a lot from Jennifer Moore and her work as well, is that we start to see, I am sure many individuals in the Montessori space in South Africa have been trying ways of making this accessible in areas that have very limited resources. And ultimately, I think the biggest win is to start to help individuals realize, and ourselves included, that quality does look different. And if you can achieve that thinking and start to realize, I can utilize any resource near me, it opens up the possibility. And suddenly you don't have to worry about motivating any individual because they're able to see solutions to problems much quicker, which we started to see with the training. And so it would be incredible, especially at summer. I think what we're hoping to have is an informal conversation about the kind of work that individuals are doing in communities and how do we get to the places that are most underserved and really needing just a helping hand to be able to get onto that path. Thank you for the kind words in the comments. I'm hoping, yeah, we'll be able to have access to the recording. I'm sorry, I may not be able to comment on everyone's thoughts, but thank you.
Howard, have you brushed your teeth? Hey?
I have not brushed my teeth.
Very important, twice a day.
Very important, at least. That's what they say. But Jasmine, I know it's probably hard to comment on everybody's messages, but I think a few of the words you said just really struck a chord about how just how quality is purposeful and that the materials don't make a good teacher or a perfect teacher, or that it's actually in all of us just need to discover what the child needs. And basically sounds like all your work is around changing the adult who can create that environment for a child to develop appropriately. So I think it's beautiful that tonight we, with your help, raise that awareness of the power we all have inside us as parents, first of all, not just teachers here, but, you know, members of the community, and not to be forgetting that anything in our environment, any resource can become a great lesson for our children. Anything around us can be very inspiring and help us learn something new and help our children learn something new. But I think people liked how you touched on the environment and how that's beautiful, and how you are reaching communities who, you know, probably didn't think would be able to follow Montessori education. And yeah, I think that really touched many of us tonight. Thank you everyone for your messages.
Thank you. Yeah, and I have to really thank my team, both the core team, community rooted education team, and the Indaba Institute team as well, who've done an incredible job with so few hands, but really full hearts, I think. And that's what's incredible about this community, is that even if we don't always have all the time and all the resources we need, we have ample amounts of heart and passion to make this possible. So that's why I think it's so energizing to be in this place, in this space, is that there's no shortage of care. We just need to think smart about how we can really shift things, and that too is possible. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak and be part of this.
Caitlin has a question. I'm not sure if this is something that you could answer right now. She would like to hear your thoughts on the Thrive by 5 index that was released a few weeks ago with regards to South Africa.
And 55% of children just not reaching developmental outcomes. I think that was the scariest statistic to read, is to start to see how many individuals are so far, or how many children are on record so far behind the developmental milestones they're meant to reach. And it's so incredible, that movement itself. So Innovation Edge, in partnership with FNB, and one more party, I think, have come together to start to, as a base point, I think, for all of us to see this is where we are with early childhood development. This is where we need to go. So I think it's a really good time for us to be really vocal about what it is we do in this community. We have, I think, a big task as well to bring in the statistics, bring in the research, so that we can start to strengthen the anecdotal stories we're seeing. So we know change is happening in this community, but it is the Thrive by 5 index documents like this that create a bit of a reaction, because 55%, if you throw that statistic into a community and say more than half of children out this age group are not reaching the developmental outcomes they need in order to become or progress through schooling in order to get employment. We also know that is not the end of a child's future. So there's always work that can be done to support a child, but ultimately, if we can start to turn that on its head and watch that number drop, because we're able to show how quality can change that, I think that's huge. But I think it's a huge step for us in this space, is to have that baseline, because now we as a community can go back to this index, which you can find online. I think if you search Thrive by 5, Caitlin, you may know a bit more, but it's a good resource for us to use in our conversations with funders, in our conversations maybe with government, already, to show that we are keeping up with the numbers. We are seeing how terrible the situation is. Of course, we know from experience as well, but it's a good base that we should utilize, I think. Do you have any thoughts, Caitlin, on that you would like to add? Putting you on the spot a little bit.
Hi. Sorry,
Hi.
Is this working?
We hear you.
Some hardware. Okay, I'm having some hardware problems tonight, so I really hope that my laptop doesn't crash. That's why no video. Yeah, we actually saw the Thrive by 5 index a few days after it came out. I'd wanted to open my own school for years. I think my mom still has a pack of a curriculum that I developed.
Wow. Oh no.
We lost you, Caitlin. I don't know if you can still hear us. That's a shame. Maybe you can share your message with us in the chat. Oh, bummer. But I think this is just an appetizer, just to open the discussion, and it's really, really beautiful to have everyone here tonight. And I think, if, like you said, if we were face to face, a lot more people would have liked to join in the conversation and share their thoughts, like we shared in the comments, because it's a very important topic. And for me, what I would like to take for the parents at our school, and for me as a parent, I think what I took from your words is that we need to be the model. We need to change ourselves and be the role model for the children and create that space for them, and not focus so much on objects and materials, and just be there present and observe. And that's my take. I see we're going a little bit over 8 o'clock. Maybe if anybody else would like to say anything else. Jasmine, thank you again. This is so nice to have you here tonight. Congratulations on becoming a Sama Exco member. That's really nice. I hope you can continue to do your work and your vision with everybody else in the South Africa Montessori Association.
Definitely looking forward to it. And yeah, huge responsibility, a lot of work, but a lot of great people in this space. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you to everyone who came here tonight. It's always lovely to have you all. Makes us very happy to open these talks for everybody interested in the topics offered, and keep an eye out on our social media outlets. We hope to see you again at our next talk. For our next special guest, we don't know who it is. Maybe a surprise. Yeah, so thank you, Jasmine. Everybody's thankful and inspired, and we are too. So for the last few seconds, as usual, we can all turn on our cameras if you want to say goodbye. Get ready for bedtime. I see Chelsea and Martin and Minky.
Hey.
Kevin, Joanne, and Auntie. Probably gonna overcome Sadia. Good night.
Bye, Jasmine. I'm really excited to get going, Jasmine. So hey, I actually feel so excited with our strategy that you presented. So I'm
very excited.
Thanks.
Annette.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
nice to hear a man's voice. Thank you, Martin.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, nice, Kevin. Nice one.
Thank you, Kevin. That was way deeper than mine. Thanks.
Everyone.
I can do that too, especially with my voice right now.
Everyone.
Well, thank you again and good night. I think we'll try to make the recording available soon. And maybe we can share not sure how we can share the PowerPoint. It's quite big.
Oh, yes. Oh, I can solve that. I'll send you a low resolution version of that.
That would be amazing. And if anybody's interested, we can forward them the PowerPoint.
I would suggest people send you an email if they're wanting the
Yes.
the link.
Yeah.
Okay, good
Thank
night.
you.
Close the meeting then. Been lovely. Thank you, Jasmine, from me too.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night.